Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Women Tech Makers SSA Spotlight webinar. My name is Onajite Emera Ogo, and I'm the SSA lead for Women Tech Makers at Google. For those of you that don't know, Women Tech Makers is a global initiative that provides visibility, community, and resources to enable women in technology to thrive. Women Tech Makers SSA Spotlight was created to amplify the stories and pathways of women in technology across SSA. This series will connect women with economic opportunities in tech by demonstrating specific ways that women can jumpstart and develop in their tech careers. So today, the spotlight is on Mary Mwangi, who's the CEO and founder of Data Integrated Kenya that offers fintech solutions to SMEs in Africa. And Mary will be sharing valuable tips and tricks for sourcing funding for your growing startup as a woman entrepreneur, as well as sharing her journey of building a successful career as a woman in tech. Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. How are you doing?
I'm very fine. Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks so much. So are you ready to get started?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. So please kick us off. The spotlight is now on you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. My name is Mary Mwangi. I'm the CEO and founder of Data Integrated, which is a company we created back in 2012 to digitize and automate SMEs. And over the years, we've managed to do a lot of the automation in the public transport sector. And today I want to talk about funding for female entrepreneurs. So just to start off, there is a shortage of funding for women. As a women entrepreneur myself, I can attest to that. We started the company in 2012, and we just recently got funding from venture capitalists. So we have gotten some grants, but it's really hard for women to even make it as far as we did, just because of a lot of the challenges and the lack of support I feel that women entrepreneurs have. If you look like globally, women are only funded at 2% by all the venture capitalists. Africa being the main entrepreneur center for women, and especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where we lead with 26% of the women being entrepreneurs. And then you ask, is there then a problem if we are having 26% of the women in sub-Saharan Africa being entrepreneurs? But I think when we start talking about entrepreneurs in Africa, what we need to be cognizant of is that majority of the entrepreneurs are very small businesses. And most of them are actually necessity-based entrepreneurship, either because women didn't get employment or because it's the most convenient type of work that suits their responsibility as caregivers. And then the other one is just the workplace sometimes is not friendly to women. So women will move more to become entrepreneurs, but then this type of entrepreneurship lacks the frameworks and the support to really grow as bigger business. So what we find is that for the women that decide to get into entrepreneurship, when they try to fund these businesses, sometimes the startup capital is very difficult. And why is this? Traditionally, in the African community, even globally, women are not property owners. They don't own the land. So they might not be very creditable when they go to try and get loans from the banks. The other thing is, when you go to the larger places where they are supposed to have this access to market, it becomes very difficult because a small micro businesses, they are only mostly able to serve the communities around them. And they lack the networks. Most women are going to work, they are coming back, or they are running their businesses, they're coming back home, they have to worry about taking care of the businesses, While if you look versus men are able to pass somewhere from their business. They're not worried about being home when the kids come home. And they are able to form networks very easily. Case in point, as a business, a few times, I've heard of where similar businesses like mine, where the people are meeting, where the guys are meeting, but I don't get the invitation to these networks. So, being that even I am a bit more mobile than most women I can think about, you find that they will miss out on the opportunity on how to grow their business, on how to meet investors. So when it also comes to going after funding, and we've looked at this, and I was looking at something that Nairobi Garage posted about women and available funding for women. And when you look, the starting point for those fundings, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying the amount of it might be insufficient to grow these businesses the same way that male-based businesses will get. And why is this? When you build a necessity-based business, these are the businesses you build because you cannot find work, because it's convenient. You're forced into running your own business because it will work. You're not looking at, I am building this business because there's a bigger opportunity out there. So when it comes to talking about the growth of your business to make yourself attractive to the investors, it becomes very difficult, because most of the investors will say, okay, we want 10 times the returns of this revenue. Versus me, who has a small maybe restaurant or little mom and pop shop or a little hair salon or whatever businesses the women are getting into. And then they will say, how can you scale it up? And they will look at it and they will pass it. I had a few times I have gone and said, okay, what is your business? I said, we're the public transport business. And they said, how will you run that? And so they're saying, can you 10x our investment? How many multiples can you give us for your business? If we give you our money, how much can you get back? So this is a big challenge for the women when they go out to try and find, funders and try and attract that capital. So you're finding that most of the businesses that are being funded will be at the lower level, and it's very hard to scale up businesses at this point for the women. And then what does that do? What it does is that it creates a kind of reputation, something that they will say, okay, this business is being run like this, these women, it cannot scale up. So you find that there is less and less examples out there for women businesses that have scaled up. So the more that happens, the less attractive that will be. Though lately there has been studies where it has shown that women run businesses are bringing back more returns. So there is a push towards that. But then again, it starts from the bottom. And so if at the lower level, at the starting spot, the women are not funded adequately, they don't have the resources, or they're not in industries that will show a lot of growth potential, then you are in this cycle where you will get funding, yes, but the most funding that you will get, you will never be that competitive in the market for your business. And then the other thing that's really a big deal for the women is that women are caregivers, and so you work less hours. So sometimes for that business growth that we need to have or see requires you to work so many hours in a day. You need to be on call at all times. And you being us being the women, being the caregivers, this becomes quite a bit of a challenge for a lot of the women. So that being the case, though, we could show that in Africa, we've had several women who have actually been able to break these restrictions. And I just kind of listed just a number of women and what they've been able to do. I know there's probably one or two that it's not the typical way that we might say women will get that opportunity. But then even when you see these women making it in this industry and you compare to comparable companies, you will still see as hard as they've worked, they still have faced more hardship and just listening to some of their stories than the male counterparts. The good thing I thought I would put this on here, and actually I had my daughter help me, was that, looking at this, it makes us proud to know that, women can really make it. That if you invest in women, you will get to those 6-7 figure income coming in within the businesses. And so just a good highlight and something to tell the investors and the funders that women also do make it, even as we struggle, and with more support, we will see these kinds of numbers coming from more and more women in the region. And then one of the other challenges, like I said, is scaling up support. And this comes really close to what my experience has been. Well, there is funding out there, and there is funding that's going specifically to women. But then when a company like ours, where we have gone beyond that very early stage of funding, and you're trying to compete in the technical side, in the payment side of the business, where you need multiple partners, you need other resources, not just funding, for you to scale up and for you to 10x, or for you to be that recognizable brand in the market. It goes beyond the extent of access to funding. You need to have very good networks. I could just give a case in point where we were, we had these really good growth projections. This was almost 5 years ago. And then we're saying we will be able to hit revenue at this point and this point. And then the investors will tell you, okay, this is very good, but let's talk in a few months. And then in a few months, they are asking you, have you hit the growth points? Then you realize when you go out there, you need people who mentor you. You need people who show you the ropes, who show you how it works. And as a woman, I can tell you, I have really struggled with this. At first, I didn't realize what was hindering us, but you were going to try and get partnerships with some of the big banks and the telecoms, being a payment company, and trying to integrate. And you will find that the people that you're talking to, mostly who were men, and lately we are seeing more women in that space, they would not really take you very seriously in terms of what you want to do. And how you know they're not taking you seriously is because when someone else comes in and they're male and they propose the same thing, you find that they're getting more traction than you're doing that, depending on the field that you're going. So before you can even get to the funding stage, you need this ecosystem support that needs to come together to help you hit those numbers that make you attractive to the funding, to the funders, right? You need that. You also need that ecosystem support to help you realize your growth, to make you that market name. But then you find that as a woman, sometimes when you're even trying to penetrate the markets, you have challenges where people, your peers and others, might not take you so seriously. And your customers too. Like, we work in a very male-dominated industry, and I can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings, and most of the clients I'm talking to, they're like, we like you, we like your product, but what we're scared about, what happens if you were to get pregnant, and who's going to run the company, what's going to happen. And what they don't understand is my kids are grown. I don't need to be getting pregnant at this time, but it's something other women are going through. They're being caregivers, but then people are like, we like you, but if we support you, the funding ecosystem is wondering what happens if you get married? What happens if your life circumstances change? I wonder how many men are asked those same questions, Like when you go to look for funding, how many of them are asking, what happens if you decide to have a family? What happens if, say, your family or your husband moves from this area, or you're told you can go to work? And these are biases, and there's a lot of these biases. And sometimes they won't ask you directly, and that's probably even a problem, because it's kind of like a silent code that's also out there. They're like, can we see who your co-founders are? How many, of those co-founders are women? How many are men? Nowadays, it's a really good thing to have women in the co-founding team and all that. But sometimes you're wondering, are they just doing that to tick some SDG requirement, or are they serious when it comes to funding? Because mostly the silent no will be, yeah, we like your product, we like what you're doing, but we're not sure you are ready yet, or that your company will make it there yet. I had someone say to me the other day, we don't think you can digitize the public transport. And I said, maybe it's not that they don't think that the public transport can be digitized, because it has been proven globally that it can, but it's probably they thought that maybe you're not the person to do it. And is it because you're a woman? I don't know, maybe it's just you, but so that's just my experience. But I wonder how many other women, when you exchange stories, are having these kinds of hardships. Because yes, we are doing a lot about funding for women and training women and having women in a group. But in reality, what I think will tell is the numbers in the near future, is how many of the people, or how many of the funders that are saying this are actually putting their money in what they're saying. Right now, we haven't seen so many of it. We've seen a lot of companies raising money, big numbers here, but I'm not sure those numbers are going to women-led companies. We are seeing more grants and more funding at the very beginning seed stage, but we want to see more at the middle scaling up stages, and also far beyond the money, we want to see the networks. We want to see access and opening of the networks, because funding is not a one thing. It doesn't sit on its own. Funding is a result of a lot of things. And so those are the things need to be aligned for funding for women to actually improve. And talking about what is this training and a lot of the beginning level entrepreneur workshops that we're seeing, I've had a lot of emails coming in and saying, we're building a platform for women so that women can get the help that they need. And so you're finding that some of it is platform based. It's technology bringing to the business. But I feel that technology should be a result of, it's a means to an end. And a lot of the help that some of the women businesses we're seeing is How do you get your business on a platform? How do you get you to sell online? But before we even go to selling online, prepare us to when we sell online, how do we scale it up once we get online? These are preparations that need to be happening before that. You know, getting in all the controls, all the right measures to make sure that these businesses are able to be there. You give us money, you train us in a class how to build entrepreneurship 101. But I feel that we need to also bring in the whole person as a woman, you know, the needs of a woman, the balance, the work-life balance coming in, talking about that, the support system that every entrepreneurship as a woman will need to have so that these ventures and the funding that they get, they are able to utilize it in a way that it maximizes returns. So without those other extras being there, I feel funding in itself needs to fund beyond the business. The support needs to be beyond just the work itself. It needs to look wholly at the entrepreneur, at the persons. You know, how do you balance work when you have a family? How do you balance? How do you get loans when you don't have um, when you don't have any security? How do you do this as women? Where do we go? How do we support each other? And so funding comes from a lot of different places. And I think it's looking at how do we build this ecosystem for these women to make sure that the businesses will actually not just start and be entrepreneurs, but they will be able to scale and compete globally, not just saying we have, 26% of the business, which only makes, under 2% of the revenues of all the businesses in the region. To me, that is not the success measure we should be using to measure funding and success of entrepreneurs in the region. So I think that being said, I've said a lot about that, but I also want to add that as women and for funding, even as we look at outside funding, women have been very good at funding themselves with the table banking, where women are able to, contribute and then come in and share and help one another. This is how I knew women were doing when I was growing up. My mom was always in one of those women groups. She still does. As a business, she helps, those table groups, table banking groups were very useful. We are saying that funding is coming from different places, but some of the funding and some of that we are seeing is also of a concern. You have a lot of women in Kenya, especially where you're having mobile banking, and people are using very expensive lending just to keep their businesses going. So you have to, what happens with these very expensive lending? The challenge is it hinders the growth of the small businesses and the women especially, because yes, they're able to keep going, but they're barely making ends meet with their businesses. And like I said, because they have necessity-based businesses, sometimes they're just more comfortable just being there because they don't have a way out. You have a lot of the women getting a loan in the morning, going to the market, buying it later. I have seen this where women have the little side shops and side vegetable stands and things. So they will buy in the morning whatever they need, and then 2 hours later they run out, so they take that money and they go and they buy. And so they're looking at how fast they're able to have this turnover of this money, and then they fund. But then beyond that, which ways is it that funding for women can be improved through technology, through opportunities with other banks, with the funding companies, and maybe the distribution channels of funding the women. I don't know where to talk about this. Data integrated, what we've done and what we've looked at. I know we've worked a little bit on the vegetable delivery systems for the small merchants. And though it's very female run, when you're looking at the logistics, we're having a lot of the motorbikes doing the deliveries for these businesses. But then the challenge is some of the resources and systems that will make the small businesses operate at different levels. And we're even talking all this is to realize that even though we're talking about women funding, it's probably needs to look at it in relationship to the ecosystem of where they are. And some of the connections might be good, some of the funding might come to a certain group of women at the higher level, but then we all needed to go down the whole supply chain to run down from the bottom up or from top down. Either way, it's trying to leave no woman in the value chain behind. Then you find that the growth of the women business will actually have different metrics. We'll have a different way of measuring and showcasing the women business. And I think that's all I have to say about women funding. We help women and other small businesses collect the data, making it much easier for them to now be bankable, to have information that can make them creditable. And we are hoping we will work even more in the future with women, even though sometimes we are pulled to different sectors that seem to be male dominated. We do encourage women also to work harder in and try to get in all types of sectors. And that's what I have to say. Any questions now? I'm open for questions.
Thanks a
Now
lot,
stop
Mary.
sharing.
No, that was great. Thank you so much. So, I mean, we do have a couple of questions. We also have a comment here from Farida. I'll just read that out. She says, a lot of women around the world are facing the same issues, especially growing their network and openly talking about their accomplishments. Their startup is a difficulty for most women. I think she's just reiterating some of the things that you've said in your talk. So first of all, I mean, we have a question around how would you classify, the entrepreneurial field in Kenya regarding, regarding gender? How can you, what do you think the disparity is?
I think when I look in Kenya, we have very, very industrious women. A lot of women are doing business, like I said, out there. But then when you look, like I said, most of them are doing necessity-based business. And what that means is that, it's not something they say, I wanted to become an entrepreneur. They are resulting to being an entrepreneur because of lack of jobs. And that goes across the whole way, even for, young men, and because of the unemployment level in most of African countries, but more so for the women. And then most of the women are also going to those jobs because they feel that, these are easier jobs for them because of their family situation, or because they're supposed to be more flexible. So it's much acceptable by the husband if the woman has a little shop and then she's able to go home, or she's able to take her kids around there, that kind of thing. But then when you look at how many women are really going into entrepreneurship, right? Because They wanted to do it as an opportunity. They're looking and saying there's a gap here. I want to fill it. And those are the businesses that scale when people are looking at the gap and saying, I want to do this business because I have recognized I can bring something new that solves a problem in this industry or for the people here. So you're finding that a lot of the entrepreneurs are also resale based. They buy products that are already made and then they're trying to resell them. And that in itself has its own challenges because those businesses are very hard to scale. You know, you have a bit of revenue and they're all good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But then we're talking about, we're going to look at businesses that we're going to be able to see being funded for women that are going to be those big examples and saying, hey, as a woman, you can do this. I think before there, I showed some of the businesses. And just to talk about one of the women, she's the one who runs these, she runs Kiroshe, which builds, makes beers, you know, and she's out there competing with one of the biggest, you know, breweries, East Africa breweries, you know, Diageo, which is Diageo basically, and she is holding her own in Kenya, you know, and young people are looking at that and saying, hey, here is a woman being able to do this in a male-dominated sector, you know, and holding her own. And so these are the kinds of things I'm saying that we need to think as women. What is it that we are going to build? What is it that we're going to manufacture and create that will have multiple returns in terms of income? And I think for women, we are sometimes a little bit scared to take that big risk, you know, because we are, I guess it's sometimes also that safety net. You don't want to be told you failed, nobody's going to give you a second chance, you know. While for men, they're ready to put themselves out there. And so even when it comes to funding, a guy will do something and then he'll lose it all and then he'll start again without worrying about it. As women, we are very much taking that personally. We see like it's a verdict about who we are. It's all on us. And I think that also holds us back from taking the risk, because with risk comes the big returns. And so funders also know that. They want to see that even when you put your business proposal out there, that you're ready to take the big risk. One of the things that I heard funders want to know is, how much do you have your skin in the game? You know, we're going to fund you. How much of your own income have you put in there? And then now we come back to the place where women don't have the resources to actually put the money to the amount that's required for you to be attractive to be funded. Maybe you're using your husband's money or you got some money somewhere, but before, it's just recently in Kenya that women are inheriting property, so you can go and get a loan against that as security. So lacking that security was very difficult. I'm lucky in the sense that when I started out and I came back and I said, I want to build data integrated, you know, we're a family of women. So I have my mom, who's been a businesswoman since I can remember, you know, growing up. My dad passed when we were very young. I think I was about 3 or 4 years old. All I've known is my mom being a businesswoman. So when I come in and I say, I want to do business, she's like, okay, what business do you want to do? I said, I want to build a digital platform for payments. She didn't understand. She doesn't know. She's like, okay. Then we're going through year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Where's the money? Why is this business of yours not bringing any money? But then she's a woman and she's like, okay, do you have food for tonight? Does your kid have school fees? Do you have this? Okay, you look sad. What do you want? You want money? Okay, so then she'll give me money. You know, and so I keep putting money because I'm getting that kind of support. But I don't know, that's because we are very much of a matriarchal family and the resources and everything is being controlled by women, right? So in certain cases where you have different dynamics, for a lot of women, it's hard the pressure on them is very hard. If you want to build something, that's gonna take a lot of, or need a lot of skin in the game from you in terms of resources, in terms of money, So these are some of the challenges I think I feel that a lot of the women are missing.
Yeah.
So, you don't get to an age, you're given inheritance and you're told, okay, now go do what you want in the world.
Mm-hmm. So in that case, I mean, with all of this that you've said, how would you advise somebody, a woman who's just getting started? What would be the first thing you would advise her to do in order to get funding?
I think right now there is a lot of funding coming to women, especially for starting out. There is a bit of money. I think what you need to do is find out, what resources are available where you are. But also, more than anything, I want to ask women to do something they're passionate about and something that's authentic and something that fills a gap. One of the other problems we have here is you find one person opening a business and then 2-3 other friends will copy, or 3 people down the road will try and do the same thing. And so what they fail to recognize is what makes you different from the other person, or what made that person start the business. What did they see? And so there's a lot of copycat businesses that come up. And if you really do want to scale up your business, I would advise women to really shun that kind of thing. There's so many problems in Africa. I'm not kidding. There is almost, and every time I walk around, you see something that could be done better. There's a way we could, improve something. And I was saying the other day when I was talking, you should look for something that either increases the income, reduces costs, or bringing better efficiency and accountability into a system. And this, or provide that product that fills a gap. So to me, or need actually. So to me, if you're able to look through some of these and ask yourself those questions before you start your business, if you want to scale it up. But then there's also the other businesses that just need to be a day-to-day business. You just need your recurring income. And those ones are okay too. Then the funding becomes different. And so if you want to go for funding, it's really good that you understand where do you want your business to go in 5 years, in the next 10 years, in 3 years from now. And then you just take, funding for that kind of business. It's very important to know that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mary. And one more question from me. Being a woman in tech, being a woman in Africa, do you think that the funding disparity is a regional problem, or is it something that affects women all over the world equally?
I won't say equally, but I'll say the funding is something that affects women across the whole world. But even in Africa, if you look in Africa, there's also a lot of disparities. Not even in Africa itself. I mean, that's very broad to say. I'd say even within the different communities within a country, there are cultural differences. Depending on the culture you come from, you'll find that in some business, in some ways, some women are more aggressive, or they're allowed to be in other businesses, while in other cultures they would not be allowed to be in those businesses. And so the funding becomes different because also of the ownership of the business. In some areas, yes, women will be in the business, but their husband's name must have to be in it. There has to be a male in it. You have to get certain permissions to do certain business. And so funding is very relative depending on the community and the area. And sometimes even within certain families, it could be different. You could find like brothers are being funded better than the sister who wants to open a similar business. So to me, it's very relative, but I think there are some neutral money, you could say that, that's coming into Africa. And one of the lovely things is that I said something about the SDGs, but there is a big emphasis and attention being paid to women. I think we've never had it as good as it is now for women. I'm not saying we're there yet, but I'm saying we're making steps towards
better.
a good direction, I think. So I think we just keep working hard at it and finding those ecosystem support wherever we can find it to help improve this. And I think if we're a bit bold as women, take a little bit of a risk, we'll start seeing some good returns.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. So just to round up the Q&A, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about your own journey as a woman in technology. So can you tell us some of the challenges that you faced, if any, as a woman in tech, as an entrepreneur, and how you've overcome them?
My biggest challenge, I think, started with trying to get banks, telecoms to actually take me serious. My first meeting when I wanted to build a payment platform was working with a woman, and I was so excited. I'm going to a woman to work with her, and I said, can you help us integrate with your bank? And this is what we have, this is what we want to do. I think we were a bit early, and by being early is that the bank systems were never ready for what we wanted to do. And I think I was a bit unaware of that, but not just me, but also the banking staff were unaware of that. That, they just had a very closed system, and we wanted to bring in something that was very different. We're saying to the banks, hey, we want to run your point of sale systems very different from the way it's currently run in the whole of Africa. And we want to bring in our own terminals, we want to connect to your system. And then we want to give these to the merchants, and they will own them. Well, before banks owned this. So when banks owned the devices, they didn't put any controls of what the devices could be accessed, how the devices could be accessed, because it was all a part of them. So when you come in as an outsider, it's like you have a guest living in your house and you want to do an Airbnb, but you have no locks in any of the doors, right? So think of it like that. So you're doing an Airbnb and you're bringing these people in, and then your doors are not locked. Anybody can go into any room. You have your special things in your safe stuff in one room, your jewelry, your everything, and anybody can come into any room. Before you just had your family, you knew who was there. So now you're coming in and bringing in guests, like, they can go in everywhere and you don't want them everywhere. So then you have to start thinking, how do I put the locks? How do I put the controls? How does this work? But in the beginning, you're saying, oh yeah, come in, just come in and stay. So the guys are like, okay, yeah, you can come to our house. And then when we are at the door, you're like, wait a minute, you can't come in yet. So those are some of the challenges we had, is that the banks were not ready for outside integrators into their system, nor were the telecoms. Even the big ones, they were not ready. They didn't know. And we thought we could just go in and get this done. And it has taken the banks and the telecoms to become API-based systems a while. And so we had planned for just going in and running. I think we hadn't done enough homework about the ecosystem we were trying to get into. And so going in and trying now to get people to champion that for you within the banks and within the telecoms was very hard until they saw a need case for themselves. And then just a few months ago, one of the banks came and said, we never understood what you were trying to do, but now we completely understand, And now they are trying to fast track us into their system. We still have a few challenges, but I think that's what happens when you're a bit early to try and get some things done, and then just not having enough of a name out there You know, I think if I was like a big name organization saying I'm coming to do this, maybe things would have been different. I'm not saying this was because I was a woman. I'm just thinking it's because we were a small tech company that was trying to bring in things that hadn't been done before and different things. So that has been my biggest challenge, actually. But we see that the environment is changing, things are changing, things are moving. Not just being us, but you know, there's a lot of people there also trying to do what we wanted to do. And I think the safety numbers, and we get to not be the only ones doing the public education, the adoption. And so I could say we are overcoming that. Yes, there's come competition with that too, but sometimes that's a good thing, a really good thing. It means that you're on the right track.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, and one final question before we run out of time.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you.
Oh, let me see. Is it any better? Can you hear me now? That's strange. Ada, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Maybe
Okay.
look at the chat box. How do we direct you to the chat box? Let's see. Let me try and get the question up for you to see. Can you see the question?
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you. So your question is, Women Tech Maker is focused on creating a world where all women can thrive in tech. Based on your experience, what do you think is needed to make this happen?
Yeah.
Personally, I think there is so much that can be done to include and help women thrive in tech. And I think one of the big things is having women tell their stories like you're doing today. So I think that's a really, really good thing. Women talking, women having these types of events. And I think building an awareness for women that actually speaks to their current challenges for the women in tech. We are seeing a lot of the collaborations coming up for women. You see a lot of the big tech doing a lot of trainings for women. You're seeing accelerators talking about or being created for women. You're having a lot of networks that are women-based. I belong to a few of those, and they are quite useful. But I think Women Tech Makers is shining a spotlight on these opportunities for women, and also working to bring the women together in these events. I think there are some women who might not get the opportunities. There's a lot of women who are not getting the opportunities to be in these tech conversations. Let me just say that. To me, I go to a lot of the events and a lot of the groups, and we have a lot of the same women. Not a bad thing, it's really good to see your buddies there. But I feel that maybe we need to reach out more to women who are not in the ecosystem. And by this, maybe it's more at the local university level, at the local organization levels. So you have some women who are working in tech, but in organizations that are not very, they're not so much on the social media, on this platform so much. And so it's finding a way to establish connecting networks for them. That's I feel that will be useful.
Thank you so much, Mary. This has been a really, really great session. It's been really amazing.
I can't hear you.
Our knowledge. We're out of time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone that was here today and asking questions. If you want to connect with Mary, her Twitter handle is at the bottom. And if you want to learn more about women tech makers, please follow us on Twitter, on social media as well. Women Tech Makers, at Women Tech Makers. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. Thank you. And thank you for having me.